Welcome back to my Welcome back to my Kerbal Space Program tutorial for Complete Newbies. This is the third part of our mission to Minmus, where we have built a rocket, launched from Kerbal beyond the moon and out here to the smaller moon Minmus, where we have since we were captured in the moon's gravitational pull and circularized our orbit around the moon, or well, more or less circularized our orbit in the last video. So that's where we are. We are starting right where we picked up last time, or right where we left off last time. And what we're doing right now is kind of scouting for a good place to land. So one of the reasons Minmus has two great things going for it to make it an excellent place to learn how to land, which is these wide open flats that you can see here, which have no rough terrain on them at all. So you're not going to end up landing on the side of a cliff or, a very steep incline or something that's going to tumble you down after or cause you to slide after you hit the ground. Or and its gravity is very, very low relatively compared even to the moon. So it's very forgiving and everything tends to happen in slow motion, which is exactly what you want as you are learning how to land on a body. And really, the skills we learn here are going to be exactly how you land on any body in the Kerbal system. The only difference is when you have an atmosphere, you can use that to help yourself slow down, and you can use it to help. You can use it to parachute down to the surface. Most of the bodies in the Kerbal system don't have an atmosphere, so every landing you do is going to be a version of what you're seeing here, which I guess we'll get to a little bit more here in just one second. So right now, our orbit does not necessarily take us over a really great landing spot. There's a couple over here that might work. So what I'm actually going to do is start speeding up time to the point where I may actually, oh, there we go. Yeah, go a little faster. I may actually take us back to the tracking station, because this, as fast as this is, may not be fast enough to do what I want us to do. Because Minmus is tidally locked to Kerbal, you can see that the terrain that passes underneath our orbit is changing as we go around the moon. So tidally locked means the same face of the moon. So here is always facing towards the planet at any given time. Actually, I may be able to swing on our next orbit. I may be able to swing around this flat. Let's see how it goes. So what that does is give you the opportunity. You can even see how the terrain is shifting as the moon moves underneath our orbit. Yeah, okay. I'm gonna miss it. If I was gonna do it, I should have done it on that last pass. So we'll just keep going around until we see an opportunity to land that's going to take us over one of the larger flats. And I want to do it in the sunlight, because landing in light is much easier than landing in darkness. And we put lights on the lander to help us in case we needed to land in darkness. I will actually turn them on as we're landing anyway, just because it will help us it helps us judge the distance between us and the ground as we're coming in. So as we're rotating around, I guess I'll kind of explain the mechanics of landing. What you do, you start off by burning retrograde to kill your orbit and shorten it up. So eventually you bring your velocity down to just about 0, or low enough that your arc is pointing towards where you want to land. And once your arc is sort of in the general vicinity of where you want to land, you begin just drifting towards the ground, and then killing your additional velocity the closer to the ground you get. You want to be at 5 meters per second or less, preferably 1 or 2 meters per second when you actually touch down. That can be pretty hard to accomplish depending on what surface you're landing on. It's way easier on a moon like Minmus, where the gravity's so light. But I think I'm going to go to the tracking station. This is going to take too long. On a moon like Minmus, where the gravity is so light, it's easier to achieve that. On some of the larger moons with heavier gravity, it can be a lot tougher. So it may actually be a pretty decent... yeah, that'll be perfect. Okay, here we go. So I guess a demonstration is worth 1,000 words, so let's actually show you what I mean by that just now. We have, so we actually have enough fuel in our lander to ditch this upper stage if we, or the last stage of our rocket if we wanted to. But I am going to keep it for now because there is some extra fuel here inside inside this last stage of the ship that got us out here. And we can use that to help us kill our velocity. And so once we burn some fuel off of this rocket, we'll actually shed it, separate, open our, or start our lander's engines, and use those to coast the rest of the way down. It's always, if you have leftover fuel when you get to wherever you're going, left in the transfer stage or whatever the ship that brought you here is, and you don't need it anymore, no reason you shouldn't use it to burn off your velocity for your landing maneuver. No reason at all. And one of the benefits of playing in science mode. All right, there's our flat that we're going to be aiming for. One of the benefits of playing in science mode is that you don't have to worry too much about the cost of your rocket parts. So if you were playing in career mode, for example, you would want to be as frugal as you can with your rocket components. You want to save as many of them as possible. Okay, so now that we are over that part of, over those flats, we're going to go ahead and hit Z and burn off. So you can see I killed it. Yeah, we're at 2.9 meters per second. So that means our arc is incredibly small, and we're going to come down in the middle of those flats. You can see we're already starting to gain some velocity, and that's the planet's gravity, or Minmus's gravity, pulling us towards it. So I could potentially still use this lower stage to burn off some velocity as we get closer, but I'm going to go ahead and separate now because it'll be easier for our demonstration if I just show you how this works. Okay. So this is going to fall down and crash onto the surface because our lander, we're going to be burning off more velocity the closer we get. So you have 3 buttons up here: brakes, which we don't need to worry about. Who needs brakes? Landing gears and lights. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the gears, which you can see is deploying the lander's gears. Okay. We're ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on our lights, which you can't really see right now. You can see the cabin light is on in the main cabin there. And our landing lights are on here, which we will see a little more the closer we get to the surface. So this part's fairly boring. We are falling at more or less the same rate as our lower stage. We could go a little bit. All you need to do is just touch shift, just a tiny bit, to start killing a little of that velocity. And then the lower stage will start falling faster than we are. So we've actually got quite a ways to go before we get closer to the surface. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up time while we still can. Get us a little closer. So you can see we've gained some velocity as we are falling faster and faster. So our lower stage is quite a bit of the way beneath us now. So we're going to burn a little bit more, or speed up a little bit more, excuse me. And now I'm going to burn and start shaving off a little more of that velocity. So just keep the throttle nice and low. You don't need to do anything big here. Landing is a very gentle procedure. One of the things that Kerbal Space Program introduced, and has actually made it into the vocabulary at NASA, I'm just cranking it up a little bit, and actually made it into the vocabulary at NASA, is the idea of a suicide burn, which is if you burn at full throttle, how much delta V and burn you would have to expend to calculate perfectly hitting the ground at 1 meter per second, so landing perfectly. It's sort of a Top Gun like stunt move, I guess, which is probably why it's called suicide burn, because if you screw it up, you have just killed yourself and your ship. So I'm going to go ahead and burn off a little more velocity here so we get closer. Alright, there was our lower stage hitting the ground, 4.2 kilometers beneath us. I'm in a phone room, which is why you hear that phone ringing. Ignore it. It has nothing to do with anything. Okay, kill off a little more velocity. So the idea of the suicide burn is, if you were to fully throttle up, it's the exact distance between fully throttling up and touching the ground beneath you. So it is actually the most efficient way to land, because it uses the least amount of fuel. However, it's also the most dangerous, and I recommend only doing it if you've got a flight computer controlling what you're doing, or you are really good and confident with how you're approaching this. Notice I am not doing that, because as skilled as I am at this game, I'm not that good. So you can see Minmus, I'm just kind of panning around Minmus's terrain here as we're coming in. So you can sort of see there's these flats and these rolling hills kind of just off to the sides. The moon is very small. It's a teeny tiny little moonlet. And actually, while we're on our way down, let's kill off a little more of that velocity. Okay, we are almost there. So there is some stuff we can do on the way down. Grab some science, for example. No, just take the data, store the experiments, get back on, and we're going to go ahead and hit our 9 key to run through all of our other experiments. Okay. It's pretty good. So we've got all of those as we're coming in. Alright, so you should, well, we're not quite close enough to the ground yet. I'm trying to pan around because you should be able to see the ship's shadow, which is another way you can help determine how close you are to the ground visually. It's a good indicator because actually that may be our shadow over there. That's actually not a great indicator because it's kind of far away. Because the altimeter really only works if you are landing, it's only 100% accurate if you're landing at sea level, which we may be fairly close on Minmus here. Whoops, we need to actually turn our SAS back on and have it point us retrograde. And you'll notice retrograde is straight up at this point. So this is helping keep our ship aligned, which is good. This is what we want to do. Yeah, you can see coming down. Very nice. There's a little bit of dust on Minmus's kind of blowing across the surface here. That actually only shows up if you have the mod pack installed that I installed. So if you don't see dust, that's okay. Alright, so we're getting pretty close. Time to get a little more, kill a little more of that velocity. Okay, so remember, we want to be at about 6 meters per second or less when we hit the ground. Hit the ground. When we touch down. Hit the ground sounds so not like what we want to do. So, landing can be fairly boring. I don't know if you've ever watched a video of an actual real-time video of the Apollo landing, but it was quite a bit of this, just kind of drifting in. And they were on a body with much more gravity than we're landing on, so... Okay. I can't even warp. That's fine, though. I'm trying to think of something else I can talk to you guys about as we're coming down. I've pretty much gone through everything I wanted to go through on this tutorial. So you can start to see the lights. We are close enough that you can see the lights reflecting off the surface, which is good. This is going to be kind of one of our last indicators of where we are, especially if we were landing in the dark, which is super hard to do. So this is going to be, this altimeter is, I believe, almost totally accurate for where we are towards the ground. Kill a little more velocity. Alright, we're getting closer. There's our shadow, growing bigger. Bigger, bigger, closer, closer. Alright, so I'm actually going to pan out just a little bit so you guys can see what this looks like as we drift towards the surface of Minmus. Okay. Killing a little more. Okay. And we'll just drift down nice and slow. Trust me, slower is better. It takes a little bit more fuel to do what I'm doing than just to pull a suicide burn, but it is worth the effort. Because nothing is worse than building a ship and then planning a long mission and then waiting, especially if you're doing an interplanetary transfer, to get there and crater when you hit the ground. Alright, so you can see we're getting awfully close now. There's our shot. Whoops, I actually almost stopped. I did stop. We're just kind of hovering here like Wile E. Coyote style, but we will, the gravity of the moon will kick in and we'll slowly drift back down. So yeah, the shadow's coming up to meet us. Our lights are going to get more and more resolved. And you guys, once you practice this a few times, you will get better at it. I totally expect your first landing. If you make it on your first landing, awesome. Bully for you. Minmus is the place to do it. A little bit of it is just by pure touch and instinct at this point. So I'm keeping our velocity nice and low as we come in over the last few meters. Okay, yep, almost down. So just those little burns to kill the last of the velocity. Zoom in. And that should be about it. And we're down. Nope, not quite. There it is. Welcome to Minmus. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, well, here we are. What do we do now that we're here? First of all, Annie's going EVA. This is very exciting. She is about to become the first Kerbal to step foot on another planet. So we are on the Greater Flats. You feel a bit like a superhero when you jump in the low gravity. We're going to take a surface sample. You sneak a taste of the surface sample. It does not taste like delicious dessert products. So you can see surface samples are one of the most valuable science experiments you can run. So let's grab our data from all of our other instruments. The clouds on Minmus are making the game chug a little bit. Oops. Okay, and now we're going to run our... Before we go to a few of the other things we can do while we're here, we're going to hit 9 and run all of our experiments. So the actual temperature scan from the materials study, crew report, atmospheric pressure scan, and mystery goo. So, that's pretty cool. Let's go back on EVA and grab our stuff. I realize this is, watching her take experiments is not the most exciting thing in the world, but that's okay. We're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff here in just a second. Okay, there it goes. Okay, let's take our data, store everything, and board. Okay, we're here. We've grabbed our science. I'm going to check our electrical consumption. 250. Okay, so running the lights does take an electrical charge, but we put these solar panels all over the ship. We should be grabbing enough to keep our batteries fairly well charged, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. In fact, I'm going to leave them on because it's kind of helpful. So we're going to go ahead and hit F5 to save our game, because this is always a good thing to do. And we're going to go exploring a little bit. So there's no ladder to take us down the side of the ship, but Minmus's gravity is low enough that if we just hit the space bar, we'll just fall, gently fall to the ground. If we hit R, it turns on our suit's RCS, and then we can move around. There we go. And that'll help ease our fall a little bit there. Alright, it is super choppy, I think probably because of all these stupid clouds and running the video capture software at the same time. Okay. Okay, so we've done an EVA report and we've taken a surface sample, but once you're on a planet, gosh darn it, you just want to plant a flag there. Luckily, they've given us an infinite number of flags we can plant. I don't know where she stored this gigantic flag, but I guess they make it part of the Kerbal spacesuit. Okay. Yeah, sorry it's so choppy and slow. I realize this is not the most exciting thing to watch. Alright, site name first. Minmus landing. Whoops, how about I spell that correctly? Here we are. Okay. So because RCS moves you relative to the camera, if you want to actually swing the camera around and get your glamour shot, you have to have her stand still. Hit F2 to make the UI go away, and there she is. F1 for the glamour shot. Alright, whoops. Zoom all the way in. Okay, I'm going to turn our RCS back on. And at this point, you could walk around. You could, in theory, fly to those hills that you see over there just on your RCS. It would take you a while, and if you start really cooking, you do run the risk of injuring or even killing yourself if you get yourself going fast enough, even on a small body like Minmus. So the best thing to do is just to fly over there in your ship and then land a second time, which is what I would like to try to do. So you can go get close enough to grab on. Hopefully she's got it. Yep, F2 grab. B2 board once she's done moving around. There we go. And we're ready to go. So yeah, you can walk around. You could build rovers to drive around on the surfaces. You can drop entire science labs. There's a mining portion to the game where you can extract fuel from planets or moons like Minmus. So once you've mastered how to land and you've kind of farmed science from different places, there are still things you can do once you're here. So those are the hills that we see on the one side. Those are kind of the spots on the other. I'd like to actually see if I can aim maybe even to pop up and land on those highlands. I'm going to save it again. So the question is, what direction is that from where we are? If I don't make this the first time, I'm probably going to... Yeah. Okay, there we go. So we have apoapsis of 15,000 feet, and we're going to land somewhere on those highlands. Well, that's pretty good. That's what we want. So we can't really warp more than 1,000. Forgot to do a time check. And we've been going almost a half hour. All right. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to quick save it here, and we're going to come back next time, land a second time, grab a little more science, and then we're going to be on our merry way back to Kerbal. So we actually have enough fuel. We can hop around Minmus 2 or 3 times, and maybe I'll just do that off screen, so you guys don't have to watch me go through that 10-minute landing process over and over again. Because really the important part is building the ship to get to the next phase. So anyway, until then, thanks very much. I'm going to save it again, and I'll see you right here next time.